Welcome to another episode of the Sacred Travel Podcast. I am your host, Julia, and today I actually have invited a priestess sister of mine, Yana, because the episode is going to be about me and my story and also how the podcast came to be, but to make this a bit more enlivening and interesting in a conversational style. Yana, thank you so much for coming online and interviewing me today on my own podcast. It's an honor to have you share the space and also hold the space in a way for me. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. For it is an honor as a priestess sister, but also as someone who went on some of your sacred pilgrimages to exchange with you today, and I am curious for you to reveal more of your personal journey and what inspired you to create Sacred Travel Podcast. But first, as this is about you, allow me to read and tell you more about Julia. So, as a Sagittarius sun, Julia loves traveling and loves to explore the hidden nature of all things. Her favorite place is to be in nature, connecting to the different elements. She feels alive and free. Spending 2 decades in corporate project and process management while at the same time walking the priestess path, she embodies the living bridge of both worlds. In 2021, she decided to fully devote her life to her company, Soul Wisdom, that is consecrated to empower human beings in remembering and embracing both their divine and physical nature, for it is in being the bridge that the magic and power unfolds in one's life. Julia serves as a rose priestess for the divine feminine presence in the greater awakening of the planet. As a women's ceremonialist and mentor, she guides women to live in tune with the rhythms of nature, reclaiming their sovereignty power and reconnect with their soul essence and wisdom, holding regular in-person and online women's circles. As a conscious travel and spiritual pilgrimages to powerful temples and sites has been an expansion catalyst all along her own journey, she was guided to share sacred site medicine and give a voice to the wisdom and key codes that flow through these powerful structures with the Sacred Travel podcast. She now leads priestess initiations and conscious travel experiences to places of power around the world. Her sacred sojourns are designed to ignite personal growth and facilitate a profound knowing of self and your purpose. Thank you, Julia, for your medicine. And my first question to you would be, obviously, what inspired you to create the Sacred Travel Podcast?
Mm. Thank you. Thank you for reading the bio. And before I answer the question, I really also want to just quickly say that Yana is tuning in from Bali, which is also another very like sacred vortex on the earth. And I just love that lush environment and the birds and the roosters and everything that's in the background. So it gives very much that the perspective and the feeling that I want to transmit also in the podcast, that it is about the aliveness and the lushness of these places and when we come visit, and how also just by watching your video, or even when you're listening to the background noises, how the energy of the place brings itself forward. So thank
Yes,
you for
I'm feeling this deep connection from Mama Bali to Egypt that is on the background behind you. And I was just looking at this and feeling like so much awe to the sacredness of all these places we are lucky to walk on. Yeah.
so much. Yeah. So, how the Sacred Travel Podcast came to be, it was actually something that was given to me while I was on pilgrimage last September on the holy island of Iona in Scotland. And I Yeah, I had been, I mean, I feel like I've been a traveler all my life, whether this is like physical journeys to other places, but also traveling for me very much is like as much as you do the outward journeys, it's an inside inquiry of our inner landscape and also how that always mirrors each other. And so, in the way that I have come to experience, especially, let's say, sacred sites or ancient temples, but also just vast landscapes that I connected to, and they all hold a certain medicine. They hold a certain frequency. They hold certain codes in the earth, and so I came to see our entire planet and also the grid that the earth holds as a huge repository of information. It's basically our nowadays Google. So where everybody just like goes and looks it up in the way that we can connect and tune in with the elements and also the energy of certain places, we can retrieve information. And through my experiences, that were really also a catalyst for my journey in terms of like knowing myself, knowing my inner truth, and coming to understand and also embody my own divinity in a way. It feels as if the earth is also opening up right now to really allow us as humans to access these codes that are stored in the earth. And so this podcast is very much giving a voice to this, what I call sacred site medicine, because every sacred site or even every landscape, to me, it holds a certain medicine. And even that medicine might not be the same for me as it might be for you. But there is something that when we attune to this energetic grid and field and travel to these places in a more conscious way, that we can have either a profound remembrance within ourselves or also a lot of, let's say, these ancient civilizations that have left these remnants all over the globe, whether this is megalithic structures or temples, they are very much downplayed in history and even geology, geography, in terms of this is myth, or like um, the most prominent example being the Great Pyramid of Giza, um, as a tomb. And then when you go to the places and you connect to the energy and you like feel the vibration in the earth, and you get like, wait a minute, like something is off here. That does not quite equal what I was told. And so we can have these expanded views, whether we are conscious or not, but really recover some sort of truth or underlying truth, and also challenge the beliefs that we are holding. And so that is my intention with the podcast.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing this piece about not holding to the stories that we have been told, but tuning in and feel into what comes to each one of us personally and collectively, right, when we are on these sites. And this was something I loved when personally I journeyed with you and when we went to Avalon, is how also you held the group and you allowed each person to receive their own piece of the story, while also presencing what has been going through you. And I love that you do that, whether, as you said, like in physical journeys, but also in your guided meditations and your journeys as well. And I believe this is a precious piece in a world where we are shifting from the stories that we have been told to tapping into the consciousness of what every site actually and every piece of Gaia is providing us. So as a traveler, I'm interested to know how how has travel impacted or influenced your personal journey and your spiritual journey? Like I'm sure that at a moment in one of these travels there was something that revealed the spiritual or put an accent on your spiritual path. If you would like to share some of this.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And also, first, I want to say, no matter what level of consciousness that we are holding, whenever we travel, and I'm specifically, of course, like referring to the physical travel, but it's also that we can travel to these places etherically by meditation and can connect with the energy and the frequency that certain places hold. And so, no matter what level of consciousness that we hold, because also for me, I have not been like this my entire life. So, I mean, there's tons of places where I went in what I call tourist mode. And this is not to say it in a bad way or to judge it, but it's like we go there and we mainly follow the mainstream belief that we are being told around these places without really opening up our hearts and our senses fully to being present in the experience and let this be, yeah, a living inquiry within ourselves. And so still, if we travel to places um, with in that tourist mode, there is always something that we get out of it. And I bet everybody can relate to that to some extent. So even just the fact that you are traveling on a personal level, it expands our views so much and gives us new viewpoints, just being in the experience. And because it's also when we go out of our known environment and out of our comfort zone in a way. I mean, it already starts with the planning, right? So when you do the planning and then you're in the experience and maybe something happens that catches you off guard and you have to deal with it. You're in a different country, you may not even speak the language, you don't know how yeah, like how society works. So all of these things make you operate completely outside from what you are used to. And that in itself is an immense potential for growth and like to go beyond our belief system and whatever that is. And so also on like when I started really to do pilgrimages or go on these spiritual conscious travels, connecting with um, with the energy of places and inquiring whether this is for myself or of course also I went as a participant, most above all to Egypt has been a big catalyst for my own journey. And it's interesting because as like as far back as I can think, when I was a kid, everything that was about Egypt and likewise about like ancient temple structures, or as some people would say, just a bunch of stones, I would get super excited. And back then, of course, I didn't know because I have never had any touch points. Like my parents hadn't been to Egypt, but Egypt and Greece for me were like the two destinations that always stood out. And it hadn't been until like shortly pre-COVID that that a trip to Egypt, a pilgrimage, came along. And the only thing that I knew was I need to be there. Like I had no logical explanation to why that was calling me so much. And then as we go on our self exploration journeys, of course, the more we learn about ourselves, the more we learn about maybe past lives or ancient civilizations, we are kind of gathering all these fractals of our own souls. And it's like that jigsaw puzzle, or it's like these treasure hunts where you in past lives or even as your future self, you leave keys and codes for your own soul to recall and remember wherever you go. And that was, for me, that was the definitely the case in Egypt. And so I've been twice already to a pilgrimage to Egypt with Sarah Naya Soleil and Chintia Devi. And it's been such a profound catalyst for me. So I remember, for example, one occasion, and that's actually something that I haven't like really talked about publicly. So on the first trip that I went, I had this like huge past life experience. We were on that cruise ship, like cruise ship. It sounds a bit like these beautiful like wooden, yeah, Nile cruise ships, like very intimate, very private. Um, and I don't know how many of you have like watched back in the days the movie of Titanic with Leonardo DiCaprio, and it was such a, I don't even know how to describe it. So the experience for me, like I was walking barefoot on this wooden deck of the ship, and all of a sudden the timelines like really collapsed, and I did not know, like, am I on this boat, am I somewhere else, like this is a different time, this is a different life. And I saw, or I felt, this woman that was like walking along this ship, and then there was fractals of information coming in. And so I I just, I don't know. The next thing I remember is I'm being on the floor sobbing, 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 because that realization hit me that I have been on the Titanic and that I died during, well, when the ship sank. And then only later it was that I I understood, because when I think I was like 14, and I can exactly like tell you the moment that I sat in the movies, and the entire movie I was sobbing so bad, so bad. And even for a week later, like I couldn't stop, and I did not know why. I did not understand why. And this was like a deeper wisdom of my soul coming forward. And being on that ship on the Nile in the water, that had triggered that remembrance. And it's not about just like knowing that you had a past life, but what happened then, while I was like on the floor sobbing, somebody else came up to me and said, "Hey, we have an opportunity to go in the Nile." And like in my mind, that like scene was playing out, how I am drowning in that cold water. And so it was yeah, it was really surreal in that way, in that moment. But also I knew that with being able to go into the water, into the Nile, and it's actually quite cold water, I had a possibility to release this trauma, and also to connect through the waterways of the earth, and to release that person and the dreams that had been drowned with that person that I was back then, to, in order to release that, and to also now claim my power in this life. And so it's sometimes we get caught a little bit up in these experiences, but what I feel is always very important is to know why we are receiving these fractals now, and what can we do with them in the here and now.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for sharing this. Also, because sometimes we think that the experiences we will receive or relive or remember are necessarily linked to that place we are going to. And thank you for opening this web by saying, well, it's not necessarily linked. I mean, it's not necessarily geographically linked, but it is healing a part of us. And as you put it, just like healing one of our soul fragments. And it brings me to say also, and to ask you, I mean, more seeking a confirmation from you, this is also why even going to the same place, like you said, you traveled twice to Egypt, and it's never the same experience, because every time you are ready to something different. So I don't know if you want to share like the difference between these two experiences that you had in Egypt, and how much openness or difference you felt from the first time to the second time?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for speaking to that. And I think it's an important aspect also because, I mean, so many of us are brought up and we are living in this concept of linear time, right? That is actually just an illusion. And so for and that might already be a challenging perspective for some of you listening. But I would like to encourage you also to seek out for patterns or for cycles. And the way that I have come to experience it, especially when living that path of the rose, everything is happening in cycles, and to put a layer on top, in spirals. And so when we go to these places, also we are never the same person, right? Our consciousness, our awareness changes and evolves over time. And that is actually something that I see, regardless of the travel piece, very much happening right now, that our senses are opening up so much, and we perceive, like, we can actually see things that we haven't seen before. And so, especially because Egypt is so full and it's like so rich, when you walk through the temples and you have these hieroglyphs that are just everywhere, and you can imagine it like walking down these temples, and it's like constant information being put into your field and into your aura. And then there is some that stand out to you. And for me, because also I was in a different place, now in December, that I went the second time versus the first time, you will be able to observe different things. You will be called to different energies. So whether this is different deities, different temples, or just like, yeah, different pieces that you observe, whether this is hieroglyphs, whether this is things that are going on in your life, in your mind, even at home, because also sometimes we think that everything that is going on around us is keeping from having us the experience. But so often these things that are going on around us and within us are the clues for what the actual medicine is that you are receiving in this very moment. And so I was able to, now that I went the second time, to dive a lot more deeper into things and build on some keys and codes that I had retrieved already the first time. And so it keeps on evolving. It's always that like living inquiry, and it's living keys and codes that you are constantly in exchange, in a way. Because when you go to certain places, and that might also just be, I don't know, sitting outside by your favorite tree, or being by a pool of water, this is codes that are that are coming into your body, into your bones, into your blood, into your cells. And so they become alive. It's almost like cracking open. And once they are open, there is the capacity to also to evolve and to expand over time, all the time. And because you are a living organism, and they live inside you now, there is this exchange that is constantly going on in your system. And so one thing I also would like to share about my experience from receiving codes, because many times we have that expectation in our head that I'm going to Stonehenge, like I'm going into the Great Pyramid, or I'm going to the Temple of Delphi, and I'm going to be having this like foo out of the, I don't know what experience. And sometimes nothing happens at all. And people get very upset, or like even missing out on the experience, because they are so anxious waiting for that lightning bolt to like struck them, that we are not present and we are missing out on what's actually happening. And it happened to me as well. And then only later, and it might be even when being back home already, there is pieces of information that come in, and then it's like, oh my goodness, I'm getting it now. Oh wow, that was it. And my invitation for you, whether you are listening to that podcast or whether you're actually traveling to places, is go with an open heart, like go with open senses and just be there and feel and observe what's happening. And it doesn't have to make sense at all. Just feel it. And you might understand now, or you might understand in a week, in a year, in 2 years from now. But so many times our mind and we trying to make a logical explanation for that, and I'm perfect of like searching analytical information on things, but oftentimes we are missing out on the experience.
Yeah, thank you for this precious piece, I feel, because especially when traveling with groups or when having done the homework in a way, you know, researching a certain place and having having the expectation or wanting to reproduce an experience that we have heard before, I feel it's an important piece for anyone traveling to, yeah, drop this expectation and just be present and open to whatever is ready to be received at this moment. And it goes back to what you were saying also, like it's not linear, right? It is, time is an illusion, and the same way space is. So revealing these codes later on is something totally valid and precious, which makes the experience by itself actually limitless, right? In time and
Yeah.
space. Yeah. Hmm. Would you like to share, I know you shared your experience with the remembrance of the Titanic, but would you like to share another experience from your travel that deeply affected you or actually changed your way of perceiving things, your way of feeling things with us?
Definitely. Let me just quickly pause because there's many to share. Um, yeah, I feel the last one that was very, okay, no, let's have it more. So coming back to, or maybe elaborating on something that I had said before, on really digging deeper into what is the truth that you can feel and perceive about certain sites. So when we travel to places, and whether this is, there is myths about it in terms of, oh, this was just a story, it never happened, or it's these almost like, yeah, beliefs that are being put on us and out into the world. For example, with the Great Pyramid or the pyramids being tombs. And so when you travel to Egypt and you see the actual tombs of the kings and queens in the Valley of the Kings, in the Valley of the Queens, and then you go inside the pyramid, it is such a different experience. I mean, you just simply cannot believe that this ever should have been or was a tomb. It's just simply not possible. And I guess, again, coming back also to, it doesn't matter what level of consciousness you hold, but just the way of perceiving and processing information, like seeing, hearing, and especially again, like feeling what it is that you feel that is present, whether this makes sense or not, gives you a clue to dig deeper into some information that is out there, that is definitely out there, but it might not be mainstream. And also, I feel sometimes that there is, especially when we go like into this mythological and the storytelling aspect. So wherever you find that there is a story about a mountain, about a hill, about a grove, about something, you can be sure that something important happened there. Because back in the days, we had oral, like the oral way of storytelling was the ancient way of passing on information. And so any kind of information that is a leftover nowadays is a clue or a hint that yeah, these sites were used as, whether that was ceremonial sites or for whatever reason. But so it's really also opening up our senses to, again, like, what are we being told that things are, and how do we perceive them? And another thing that I would like to speak into, because it also toggles in a little bit our cosmic nature overall, is on the last December, when I was in Egypt, we had the privilege to have a private visit to the Osirian, which is a temple site, an even more ancient temple site in Abydos, where you can find an engraving or imprinting of the flower of life, which is one of the most like intriguing geometrical patterns, revealing all of the codes of life itself, basically. And when and being in this temple site, it was to me like a huge command control of either some sort of spaceship or some like remote, yeah, control in space. And we spent quite a significant amount of time there. And it's also very much connected to the constellation of Orion, which again, like, I have always felt a very personal connection to. And so for me, the time that we spent there, and it was like a day, but for me it felt like I had spent 3 days on Orion. And I was so, like, literally sucked up in space that my entire reality on Earth was, I felt like the plane, like my ground that I was walking, was 45 degrees shifted. So I always felt like I was walking I was walking very wobbly. Um, and it took me a while also to integrate these energies into my system, because that's another thing, that when, like, we have these expectations, we travel to the places and we receive these great insights, but also I'm telling you that often it is a very, very physical experience, and we need to be ready. Our body needs to be ready in order to hold these codes on a constant level. Otherwise, it would simply be too much. And so, also a little bit like circling back to your question about that, what is it like to go to a certain place several times? I strongly believe that also the more work that we do on ourselves, the more capacity we have to hold light and frequency inside our bodies. And so that is also why we will always get different information. Yeah. Or another layer of information.
Thank you for sharing such a intimate also experience, you know, like now I feel we are I could see you almost, you know, on this spaceship. And I remember at the time you told me like your whole connection with the real life, you know, even with your entourage has been so different, right? Ah.
Of
um
course, because
yeah,
it
and
is also, sorry if I can just like respond to that,
go ahead.
because I feel it's important, because when we go on these travels, it is, it might be for us, but when you have such profound realizations about life, like life itself, you cannot go back to where you came from. It's simply not possible. And so that will automatically also change your behavior. It will change how you relate to your inner circle, your outer circle, and that will have ripple effects in your entire life.
Yeah, totally. And would you say also that, you know, like traveling from one place to another, even like coming back home and then traveling to another place, it's as if you are also weaving this, you know, this web of energies in different places and transporting, like this is what I'm experiencing now, transporting one energy to another. Even if we don't fully know what it is, we don't have to. Like, what is your experience on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the way that I see it is that these become living codes inside of us. And especially when we speak about water, right? Water is one of the main information carriers, and our bodies are of like 80% water. So these water codes are alive within us. And whenever we go to another place, there is again like this reciprocity and that exchange that happens, whether it is we put our feet on the earth and we connect to the ley lines, or whether it is we um, indulge ourselves in a body of water and there is this exchange happening. But it is, we are made of the elementals, and also we are, I strongly believe that everyone, especially if you are having the call to travel to these places, and if you are a listener, it is very likely that you are a steward of the earth, whether you have discovered that like fully or not. And so it is like you are collecting these codes and these trails of light, and you are helping to spread them over and all along the earth grid.
Mm, yeah. Um, and speaking about the internal water, but I know you also have this ritual of transporting, you know, water from one sacred place to another. I still remember. I would like to share that with you. I don't think I've ever shared it with you. I still remember we were starting to know each other's, and I saw this sharing of yours on social media where you were preparing a personal trip to Egypt, and you shared your suitcase, and it was full of, you know, like bottles of waters and little rituals and offerings, and I loved that. And it brings me to my question, like, in what way do you incorporate consciousness and spirituality into your travel experiences, no matter whether these are personal or, you know, like with a group or pilgrimages, and how would you suggest others to do the same?
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And I'm laughing because my husband often jokes, because my suitcase is like, there's more things in my suitcase when we travel that are quote unquote like my spiritual ritual items than anything else. And whenever I pick up a piece of rock, and he's like, what do you do with it? Like, what do you use it for? I'm like, I need it. And so, yes, it's true. I love, well, first of all, I want to say it's a reciprocity, right? And it's very important that when you when you connect or you want to make a connection with a certain piece of land, that you always ask for permission. So you don't just go, or you don't just take or give without asking permission. And it's always a reciprocity, because yes, we might receive certain healings from a place or a site or a temple, but on the other hand, as I said, I strongly believe that we are all stewards and like taking care of this precious planet that we live on. And so it is, for me, kind of like a no-brainer in a way, that also I am leaving something to the land wherever I go. And I just want to make sure that this is, of course, all biodegradable things. So I love to give rose petals, for example, or I love to also, yeah, just as you mentioned, the water. So for me, water is, because water has the ability to hold information and to store codes, and we can program it. It is such a profound helper and tool for me in my ceremonies and in my rituals. And so whenever I go to certain places with sacred water sources or well, I take a little bit of the water, and then when I go, I also spread the water. And usually it's not me, or it doesn't feel like it's my mind telling me, oh, like this needs to go there and that needs to be in exchange with something else. It's really that I receive these information in meditation, or when I prepare before going, that I'm like told, oh, you need to bring, I don't know, water from Avalon, and like um the White Spring, and mix it with another feminine source of water somewhere else. So these portals sort of can open, or this exchange of information can happen, so that there is a more harmonious flow on the earth too. And so yeah, I would say it's I mean, I bring many times, I bring like these little glasses or phials where I gather sand, I gather little rocks, I gather water, whatever you feel called to. And then also, again, leaving the offerings that you feel called to cultivate this reciprocity and also this humbleness that the earth is providing for everything.
Yeah, thank you for being a precious stewardess, as you mentioned earlier. Um, yeah, that this is again like one of the very precious rituals that I have appreciated when traveling with you as well, is um, how you made also ritual be very easy. We often think of rituals as, you know, we have this whole preparation for it, and as you said, it's just a call going through you, rather than this is what I have to do, or this is what I think I need to do. Hmm. Is there, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, because some of us, we don't have plenty of time. And there is also, when you go on a, let's say, more personal journey, and you might even be with your family or with your kids, it doesn't have to be like all obvious. It doesn't have to be all um yeah, planned out or like super sophisticated in a way. It can be in the super super simple things. And also especially if there is people with kids that are listening, encouraging just you to teach your children how to cultivate a different connection with the earth, and in the way how we treat the land that we are on. And so yeah, it can be the very very subtle and small things in gratitude.
Yeah, as you were saying that, I was imagining, this natural movement that we often also us as children or even as adults when we are on the beach, for example, and we have this habit, and I don't know anyone who doesn't do it, of collecting shells or little
Yeah,
stones. We do it unconsciously, right? And how beautiful would it be to do it in this reciprocity as well, and in this gratitude towards the earth, and in a way it normalizes the ritual, right? Because very often we are doing the ritual from a very natural place, without even knowing that it is a ritual, and we are
yeah,
taking a piece with us, or we are bringing a piece with us.
so much. Yeah.
um, Going back to your podcast, unless you have something else to share about your personal experiences and your travels. um,
We will have so many episodes to tune into that.
I would really love for you to state what do you hope your audience takes away from listening to your podcast?
Thank you. That's a great question. My main intention is for all the listeners and people watching to come to perceive the earth as a living library and a repository of information that we can access through these very potent, like natural energetic vortices that are there, where there is temples or sites built on it. And beyond that, also just by going into your backyard and like sitting with your piece of land that you're on, um, exploring your own sacred sites around your area, because I bet that there is quite a lot, although you might not be aware of. And this podcast is really for people who are spiritual seekers and devoted pilgrims, but I likewise want to make it open also if you are just curious about another level of traveling. And so over the next episodes, there's going to be solo episodes where I share about my different experiences, but I also have the honor and the beauty of inviting a lot of guests where they share about different sacred sites around the world. And for me, another thing that is really important is really also giving a voice to what I feel is that sacred site medicine that is kind of lying dormant, but that is really on the rise right now and wants to make its way into the consciousness of every one of you, so that we challenge the beliefs that we've been told, and that also we can use them as an accelerator and ignite our personal growth and stories.
I'm forward to discover the library that you are bringing in from the library of the preciousness of Gaia into your podcast. Yeah, yeah, and such a beautiful manifestation, Julia, as well, on um, bringing your travel into reality.
I'm inviting everybody to tune into the next episodes. I hope that this little teaser and storytelling ignited your curiosity, and I'll see you in the next episodes.